Spinning. Okay, we should be live. So, hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining the Cutaway Security ICS Friday Information Security Chat. So, it's a long name just to say that, we're going to get together and just kind of hang out. Looks like Oscar just joined us. My name's, so for everybody that's not familiar with that, my name's Don C. Weber. I work for Cutaway Security. We do information security within the industrial control arena, so to speak. I teach for SANS. I teach the ICS 410 class. Actually, I'm teaching this week, so I had to jump off of there, and then I'll jump right back on when we get there. What we're supposed to be doing here is just having conversations around industrial control systems. Hopefully I can, I'll get some operators in. Actually, bringing Mike in was one of my first methods of getting somebody that is really experienced in the operational sides of the field, because Mike's got some great background in there. We're joined by a few of my friends, people that I've worked with before and that I know Mike is familiar with. Hello, everybody that's joining the streams. I'll try to get to your comments as we're doing it. But good afternoon. I hope everybody's having a good day. So, Mike, I asked you to join me to help me with this, and you, sucker, said yes, right? So, why don't you go ahead, since I asked you here first, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about a little bit, let everybody know what your background is, and then we can just talk about, whatever you want to talk about. I've got a few questions, and maybe Aaron and Oscar do too. So, go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. Always a pleasure and a blessing to be joining this community. I always, I love it when Don reaches out. All of us are busy, of course, so not always have time, but definitely today. And so thank you for that. So my background, just a little bit about me. I've been in this business for quite a while. Now, when I say business, security, I have, but I've also been in the automation side. So where did I start? So my career began a little over 20 years ago in automation, actually. So instrumentation, electrical. So I kind of came up through boots on the ground, working mostly in oil and gas sectors. Refineries, those chemical plants, those kind of things. Moved, and so throughout my career, though, I've done some work in midstream and upstream. I finished off with a global role, in an oil and gas major before coming to Dragos, but my time has really been spent around automation. So a lot of times when I look at security and those kind of things, I look at it really from that automation perspective. How can a cyber, type of impact affect the actual plant floor? But nevertheless, before I delve into that too much, in Dragos, what I'm currently doing right now, I'm a principal industrial consultant. So a lot of what I do is do architecture reviews, help with tabletops, facilitate tabletops, those kind of things. Also help out with some vulnerability assessments and so forth. Not so much on the red team. That's where Aaron comes in. So he is definitely one of our experts in red teaming and also pen testing. And then Oscar here joining us here too. So a lot of awesome folks on this call today. But essentially, my focus has really been around the systems themselves, maintaining, configuring them, and then securing them. So I also help with. Go ahead.
So, and not to interrupt, I kind of just want to kind of get into like asking some of the questions and stuff like that. And when we started this, you were actually flying, you're flying away, and we were texting, and you were like, oh man, segmentation is a great topic. So, obviously you're coming back from a client site. So is there anything that you can relate, what do you want to talk about segmentation? Because I think it's a great topic.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. So one of the things that we see all the time, so I go on a lot of assessments, and some of our assessments are remote, some of them are on site. So last week I was at a site, great customer we were working with and doing an assessment. And so this industry was more manufacturing and those kind of things. But nevertheless, almost every time we go into an environment from a consultancy perspective, and Don, I'm sure you've seen this before, but you go in there and you begin to understand the network, the architecture, and segmentation is something that it's a known finding. It's just something that you'll commonly see, and that's because we have older networks, older systems. A lot of these, these plants, these factories, and so forth were developed or put together many years ago, oftentimes, and so you have a lot of legacy systems out there. So, trying to fix what's there, and a lot of these systems can't be taken out for changing the network out, those kind of things, redoing zones and conduits, if you will, all those kind of things. So it's often you find segmentation findings, but it is one of the things that I think that we don't have to all feel bad about. It's something that it can be, let's begin to plan for it and rectify it. And so when I say segmentation too, we're talking about network segmentation from ITOT. I'm talking about inter-segmentation within these facilities. And then also when you think about it too, segmentation, that's you're separating different systems apart, different depending on trust, communication, protocols, so forth. You also have domain segmentation. And so another thing that I found recently was systems in the OT connected to an IT domain, and then also shared domains across different networks and environments.
So
So
yeah, so
lots of
Wes is
things.
asking a
Go ahead.
question. I think it kind of leads into it, and it's he's asking a question about some of your experience from the IT side, and certainly it's you're talking about how it was merged, and we want to avoid that or kind of reduce that as much as possible, but also from a skill standpoint. So thinking about segmentation, thinking about the network things, people that are moving from network administration from the IT side or even network security over to the control side. Is there, I imagine that, obviously the technologies are the same. So how do the systems, the experiences roll over? And also what would be some of the major differences so that somebody could start looking into that?
Yeah, this may be a good one for kind of Aaron, if you want to kind of piggyback on some of what I'm saying. But how much engineering knowledge? So the question is really about how much engineering knowledge is necessary to really get into ICS. I think was kind of what Wes was talking about here, and it's definitely something that you can learn and grow over time. You don't have to come from the automation space to be good at ICS security. It helps a lot. But in general, you're still taking those security concepts and of principle of least privilege, those kind of areas, and you're applying it just into a different environment. The consequences and the impacts of something going wrong are much greater in the ICS environment, but still, it's you're using the same methodology and the same principles. A lot of what I've learned from the security perspective, it's been through different SANS courses and so forth, understanding security and applying automation principles to it. So you don't have to come from, you don't have to have my background. It helps, but you do have to go in and be curious. You have to go in with that mindset of always learning. Like Oscar on the online here, he comes from a process engineering background. His background is different than mine in such that he understands actually the principles of how the process actually works from a chemistry perspective. So each of us have different backgrounds, and we can use those backgrounds. Somebody coming from IT only into this environment is very much so that you have areas where you have more capability than somebody who may not. Go ahead, Don.
Aaron, did you have something that you wanted to interject? Mike said that you might have some good input.
Yeah, I can totally add some talking points. So I actually came from the enterprise side myself. So like Mike said, I'm a principal pen tester for Dragos. I've been a recreational hacker since, I was a teenager. And I also have an oil and gas background. So I started on the enterprise security side at that organization. And probably 3-4 years into the role, the ICS security manager got to know me through a mutual friend. He knew I knew how to break into all these systems. So he asked me, would I be interested in helping him secure the plant systems? So fast forward 18 months, I was redesigning all the plant networks, all the plant architecture, and a lot of the principles on the enterprise side do translate to the ICS OT side. But I'd say the biggest thing you want to consider is have a respect for what the impact is in the ICS OT side. That's something I didn't know until I started getting into it. Because on the enterprise IT side, impacts are a user account is compromised or a server goes down and so people can't get to their email. It's like big deal. Plant goes down, that's a big deal. That's not only a lot of money, but depending what the plant is, that could lead to a safety event, and it's a different mindset. But like Mike said, going in there curious, asking questions, learning how the process works will certainly help you earn the respect of plant people a lot quicker. Because I think we've all been there. We show up to an asset we've never been to before. They ask, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Because there's always the story somebody from IT came and tried something and broke something.
Yeah, especially information security. I mean, that's, in my background is not OT. I mean, I've done, I keep saying that, but at the same time, I've been doing, security research and working in this arena for about 10 years. But certainly from the actual implementation standpoint, I'm not a double E, I'm not a chemical engineer and so forth. So I do lack that. But, I just go into these areas remembering that I've got a lot of experience and knowledge that actually applies to this. And now it's just getting them to be comfortable with my experiences and using my experiences to augment what they're trying to do, helping them to understand and that we're working as a team, and then going from there. So Oscar, I want to get back around to you because you had talked about, when we were spinning up to this, you had mentioned that, hey, I've got something I want to ask Mike about. So is there a question or did we answer it already, or was there a question you wanted to ask Mike?
Oh, it was that question actually. You was talking about the path. I was curious about. I knew a little bit about Mike's experience, but it was the transition, right? Because sometimes you are really oriented, really dedicated to one field, and then you start moving and exploring. So I was very curious about that, but I think already heard from Mike.
Actually, Oscar, I've got a question because, I deal a lot with North America, and certainly I know you're in Canada right now, but you've got experiences from international experiences, from down in South America. So is there a difference to approach and to the, what are the differences that you find from implementations, both of the control network and security of the control network? Are there any?
In security, I won't speak much. I was process designer, so my role was more like, okay, I want this process to work in this way, and then I will pass the ball to another team that will be in charge of the implementation, the details, and securing that. In terms of design, I don't think there are a lot of differences. And the thing is, normally in all around the world, we use kind of similar standards. So yes, they are kind of national standards, and every country will have some regulation, legislation about how to do things right. But at the end of the day, if you compare North American standards, for example, for patrolling the API norms, and then you compare Canadian equivalent, and then you compare a Colombian or South American equivalent, they are pretty much the same. And sometimes you can translate like, okay, this is exactly the same as this one. So if you see the approach, they are very, very similar. Now,
the physics are the same, right? The physics don't change when you go south of the border, right?
And the principles, if you see, there is a logic behind all the recommendations, right? So it's quite similar. One difference is the budget, right? It's not the same amount of money that you have available in a big refinery in Texas that you have in South America countries. So those things sometimes it matter a little bit, like, okay, how much can you spend on some certain items?
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things whenever, because I don't do a lot of work overseas, but there's always that component of that, I might have to go over there because most of the organizations that I do work with are international. So we're constantly thinking about that. But we're also, I'm always asking the question, am I going to be able to get my equipment over there? Are there import laws, and restrictions both on equipment and on software? So that's always been a consideration for me as well. So
I'd share whatever you're planning to take there, plan for the opportunity to not be able to take it back. I've been in those situations. I've traveled internationally too, like Oscar said. What you actually see at those sites probably won't change from a principle standpoint. They just follow a different framework. So doing some homework on some of those ISA standards that are more European recognized and something like NIST will certainly help you out there.
Excellent. So, Mike, I want to come back around to you. You're the star of the show. So, is there something else that you wanted to cover or express one of your recent experiences that you think that would be interesting?
Yeah, another thing that I'm kind of finding a lot is around keeping track of your systems. And what I'm saying about that is like project files and those kind of things. A lot of what we deal with in this environment, centers around, could be a PLC. If you're in a larger environment, you're going to have a DCS system or whatever. Irregardless of that, you're making changes to systems, and when those changes are made, it's following some sort of a process around, understanding who's making the changes, what those changes are incurring, and so forth. So it's part of change management, but it's also understanding who has that backup copy for restoration and so forth. And so one of the things that we're seeing quite a lot is, again, people are doing the best they can, but when you get in these environments and they may have a fleet of let's say 50 PLCs, for example. It's kind of a small number actually. But when you see the amount of those systems out there, and you begin to ask questions on how are you backing up, how do you know if somebody's made a change or not? A lot of times it's around just we're doing our best. We're keeping a backup copy over here on a IT share somewhere, and those kind of things. So those project files are where we know how the process works. So it's one of those areas where an adversary is going to be looking for. So it's having this mindset around proper change management on our critical systems and devices, and then also understanding where those are located. Can you recover from them? Has it is there a way to test them, and those kind of things? So there's some tools around that. I don't want to get into that because some of them are very vendor specific, but it's just around just understanding that, because I think when we see a lot of these things where we talk about some sort of a process impact, ransomware, for instance, is a big deal right now. You're probably not going to get ransomware in your PLC, but just having that idea of how can I quickly recover from my device, and the thing that I'm using to recover from, how do I know if it's good and it's what was just last in there? So
yeah, I've always been surprised about the different ways. It's every organization you go into is unique in their deployment, even if you're it's just because of the requirements and because of the people that were actually selected to implement a solution. They come up with different means to do it. I went to it's one organization, but I went into two of their different sites, right? And they had their HMIs and their HMI servers set up one way, and all of them were standalone systems. And I go into this to another location and thinking that I'm going to see it the same way, and so not really prioritizing that communications because they were standalone. I get into this next location and I see that wow, they're sharing files across Windows file shares between the HMIs and the HMS server. This is completely different. Even though it's the same style of implementation, they approached it from a different way. So what are some of your experiences and recommendations around understanding those differences from site to sites, and what would you have to say about that?
Yeah, so first of all, it's and just like you said, even within the same company, each site, a lot of times from the OT perspective, a lot of times there hasn't been, or historically there hasn't been a lot of overlap. In IT, a lot of times we see that very, very similar networks and implementations of Active Directory and so forth. But when you get down into the control environment, each plant's kind of different, and it can even be this massive differences with the same vendor. Looking at the same network architecture from one plant to the other plant, you'd think, wow, I'm using the same vendor, but they look completely different. One may be using a domain or a work groups and so forth. One of the things, though, is it kind of comes down to it's asset inventory. So understanding what you have in the environment, and then understanding your data flows, and that comes down to getting that proper visibility. Visibility could be you go out and take packet captures around those critical areas, and you just understand what is connected to what. You can use freeware tools, paid tools to do this kind of work, but it really does help you to understand what the critical systems are in your environment. The crown jewels, if you will, in those systems, because if I lose this one server here, what impact does that have on the rest of my system? Helps you to evaluate criticalities. I was actually just thinking about this here last weekend about a server I used to maintain in one of the refineries I worked at, and the server is just a file share server, but it was interconnected so tightly between getting recipes for blending and an oil refinery. This thing handled, environmental reports. It handled, I think, tank gauging and a couple other things. This one server was kind of the neural network, if you will, of the entire OT system. And if it went down, for instance, you'd have a massive process impact. So again, having that understanding of what your systems are doing and what they're all connected to is extremely important. And just being able to document that and to highlight, hey, this server, it's a Windows server with a file share or file sharing enabled. This is probably one of our most critical besides my DCS in my whole plant. And then work to kind of decouple some of those massive criticalities, if you will.
Excellent. I mean, I look at you, I look at Oscar, and and Aaron's experiences. All of you have that implementation background, and certainly, I'm a perfect example of that. You don't necessarily need that, but what would be your recommendations for people that want to move? Because I get a lot of people that are asking, like, hey, I'm trying to get into this, I want to move over. I also have people that are like saying that I want to move into security. I'm actually doing stuff within the OT environment, but I want to get on the security team. But nobody's allowing me to move over. Nobody's letting me get in those experience, or they're not listening to what I have to say. So to those people, what would you have to say to those people that want to expand themselves, either getting new knowledge or even moving over to the teams?
I'll take the first stab, and I'll let Aaron, Oscar, guys can kind of jump in here too. But from my perspective, there was no path for me when I came from automation into security. I made my path, and what do I mean by that? That means I did. If I look back on my career, it's been a lot of evenings and weekends. It's self-study. It's really bettering myself. So each time that I made a further progression into security, it was just through sending an email out and saying, I see this project is going on where you're doing some security work or networking work. How can I help out? I've just recently taken these courses, or I've done some self-study around this area, and I'd like to work on that a little bit more. So that's kind of how I got into networking on the control system side, got into control system automation, and then eventually security, just by saying, I've been doing a lot of work back here. I'd really like to help out with this in any way I can. A lot of times that meant I was kind of doing a job and a half at times, but eventually it paid off as I slowly moved into these different jobs. So
Oscar, I mean, I know you moved into it, and you worked really hard at doing it, and you were successful. So is there any recommendations, or can you share an experience from your path?
I think the first thing I will say is to talk with the operators. I mean, they know a lot about not just the process, like the physics, the process, how it works, but about the controls, about the business side of it. Like, okay, I am responsible for this area and how this area fits with the rest of the business. So I have the opportunity, and that was kind of, I'm lucky that I can go to the refinery, and I was able to talk with the operators, and hey, can you explain how it's working from the process side, and then can you talk about the controls? And sometimes they are well, obviously at the beginning of who are you and why you are interested in this. And that's very, very understandable, right? Because they are responsible for that area, and if something goes wrong, that's their area, that's their baby. So they are really careful about what do you do with that. But once you pass that barrier, I often see that they are very welcoming, and they try to help you as much as they can. So sometimes it's, let's go with me, let's go for a walk, let's go with the round, we are going to do this, and let's see the controls. And walking with them, talking with them, I had the opportunity to say, okay, what is that? How do you use that? And then I start getting this confidence, like, okay, I know I can talk with you. Then I can go back and start talking with the engineers on the other side. What was your plan, and why the plan is now looking like that? And suddenly I started looking like different talks, and I was kind of always interested a little bit on the cybersecurity part. So it was, okay, now we have the operation part solved. How do you protect against this? discuss and those discussions, it was always like, okay, can you explain a little bit? And I will say that at least in my career, most of the time people are really welcoming. They are willing to spend time with you, and if you ask, they probably can give you 1 hour, 2 hours of their time and explain things, and you learn, you get sources to read, and you keep moving.
Yeah, I think, and that's one of the things that I kind of express to people is the fact that, first of all, be curious. Even if you aren't moving and you aren't achieving your path at that moment, it doesn't mean anybody's stopping you from doing that experience on your own. And certainly, like you said, going out and learning, finding mentors to provide you information about a certain thing, give you that a little bit more education, especially from an information security standpoint. Actually, one of the best things for us to do is understand the technologies as much as we can. We might not be experts. We might not have that depth of knowledge for implementation, but we can have that breadth of knowledge and understand how things all correlate and actually make those connections for who has the answers. I mean, I'm constantly, I've pinged Mike on multiple times. Oscar, I know I've asked you a couple things, but I've got a list of people that I go down. Some of them are the other SANS instructors saying, "Hey, I'm seeing this. What does this mean? Is this right? Are they doing it right, or are they cutting corners?" Those types of things. So, yeah. So thanks for that experience. Yeah, and you're getting kudos in the chats too, Oscar. I got to see some of your move into this. Hopefully, you're, I believe that you're in a good spot where you wanted to be, and you're having those experiences. Mike, I have to ask. You've had some of my favorite SANS ICS Summit talks. Are you submitting a paper this year?
So yeah, I'll do another talk this year. Definitely. Okay. Yep.
Do you know what you're doing? Or are you working on? I mean, the last one you did was the coffee that the coffee maker. Is that still running in your garage?
Absolutely. In fact, I used it last week. Yep. So absolutely, still brewing up some fresh coffee for sure.
Awesome.
I think this year I might be working with somebody else to submit a combined talk. It might be around, not totally sure yet, but around the differences on safety versus non-safety PLCs and and then how you'd use them, how you'd secure them, and those kind of things. So
awesome. Excellent. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. So we're coming up on the half an hour. I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to let everybody know where they can find them. So Aaron, is there any place that people can reach out to you and talk about OT and the pen testing red team side?
Yeah, I'm always around on social media. My Twitter handle is @ICS_Blitz. Also talking back, like everyone brought up great points getting in this industry. Like you said, finding a mentor. There's nobody I know in this space that's not willing to answer people's questions. And also sometimes being hands-on, having that inquisitive mind is the best way to learn it. So while CTFs for this space are limited, they do exist. DEF CON has one, SANS does one, Dragos just did one at our first conference. There's also some other stuff coming down the pipeline. But always feel free to reach out to pretty much any of us at any time. We're more than happy to help guide the path because we need help. So
yeah, yeah, we all, yeah. We need this is just growing, and it's going to grow. So Oscar, where can people? I see your Twitter handle in there, and I believe that's on Discord as well. Is there anywhere else that you want to point people to find you and talk to you?
No, I think those are maybe I'm all the time over there.
Awesome.
So yeah, if you have questions and I can help, by all means.
Okay, thank you. And then Mike, yeah, I put your in some of the social media posts, I did put your Twitter handle in there, and also on LinkedIn, put your LinkedIn. But where else can people look for you, find you? Are you speaking anywhere in the near future?
Yeah. So coming up, I'll definitely be at the SANS ICS Security Conference in June. So you'll definitely see me there. So the folks that are planning on attending, I'd love to see you. Also, I also kind of monitor the SANS, ICS channel as well. So for folks posting in there, but yeah, as others folks said, feel free to reach out to us. Love to help. So
excellent. Well, Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the stream. Mike, Aaron, Oscar, it's always a pleasure to meet you and collaborate with you. Everybody that joined and listened in on the stream, both on YouTube and LinkedIn, we really appreciate your time. We're glad that you got to join us for this edition of Cutaway Security. What is it? I can't remember what I called it. The ICS Friday Infosec chat. So I look forward to next week. I haven't figured out who we're going to have on, but I've got got a few feelers out. But certainly, Mike, Aaron, Oscar, you're welcome to join anytime and just add to the conversation. Hope to see y'all back here soon. But other than that, thank you, everybody. Have a great day and a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Everyone. Cheers.
Stay safe.